Hello guys and welcome back to this new video. Today we are going to talk about cosmogonies and the formation and creation of the earth, but more in general the world itself. To do so, we are going also to take advantage of our knowledge and specifically of a book that I came in contact with, which is a book by Guillaume Debras, and his report of different theories, different cosmogonies, different formations of Earth and the entire world. So let's start with the first one. We are in Benin, in this African country that was flourishing at least until the slave trade started. And so we're talking about 18th and 19th century. Now there, the dominant ethnicity was that of the Fon. According to them, God created the earth and separated the earth from the sea, and he began to put the trees, mountains on earth. So the earth itself became very, very heavy. Therefore, God asked to a giant snake named Aito Akbeto to come and support the earth. And so the earth rests on this huge snake, which is fed with iron bars, and the iron bars get to him, to his mouth, by a bunch of monkeys that will pass through his body and put these iron bars in his mouth. The second theory, though, that we have to deal with is that elaborated by Cyrus Teed. He was an alchemist, prophet, a scientist. He was active in 1860, and basically he believed something very important here, that men do not live on the most superficial layer of earth, but there are actually two lands, right? Two earths, and men live in between, in that layer that is in between. Now he also created a great congregation of adepts, and he was called by them Cyrus the Great, also known with the term Koresh. He died in 1908, but also predicted his own resurrection, and he thought that must have occurred in 1961. Let's now move on and go to the RBGWA, unless I've butchered the pronunciation, which is very likely, and specifically to the tribe of Alconchini. I believe that is the pronunciation, but I'm not sure. Now, they believe that the earth was flat, and it was actually an island known as Manito. Now, the creation of the world mixes with dream states, right, of different sorts, and we do end up having a flat earth. That is this kind of state where we find the earth. But we also believe that the earth itself, but not necessarily we, but them, that the earth itself was like a mango extracted from the sea by a muskrat. It's a fascinating theory using rats here. Now let's go then to our third theory, that of Vikings, specifically Vikings from the 13th century. Now they believed that there were mountain ranges at the end of the earth, and that those mountain ranges would protect a huge body of water that was to be found at the center. Now, in this water, that was Jomungard, meaning a giant snake, son of Loki, who protected the Middle Earth. The Middle Earth was called Midgard, and it was the place where man would live and continue to live until the arrival of Ragnarok. That is to say, a bloody war that would destroy every civilization on Earth and would determine possibly the end of the world. Let's then go to Bantu people. We are in Congo, and in Congo there is this divinity that is known as Bumba. Now, Bumba has extraordinary powers that are in abundance, right? And that is possibly why it is told that the Bumba vomited the world, threw literally up the world, sign of the abundance of its power. And yes, so he vomited the world and then creates the sun, so that the heat could shrink down the waters, and those could be separated from the land, from the actual land. Then at this point, the earth must be populated, right? So he creates 9 prototypical figures, each of a certain kind. The last one of these prototypes is man. It's actually white man, it's important to say, right? Because white here refers to a symbol of purity, and also because at that time Congo starts being colonized, and so possibly they have also changed the original god, which we might presume to have been like a black god, into a white god, the power of colonizing another territory. Let's move on. Let's go then to the Jamai. They were in Siam, which is somewhere around Thailand and Myanmar. And here we find Shuzangu and Xiangnui, and those 2 divinities created out of chaos heaven and earth. Now, how did they do that? Basically by extracting heaven and earth from the chaos worm. Then they created 9 generations of frogs, meaning they created these figures that were more resembling to frogs. And then, in the course of like 9 generations, those frogs became more and more similar to human beings. And so we might descend directly from frogs. Wonderful. All right, then next story is a story that comes from Mongolia. We have a llama that comes down from heaven. We don't know exactly where the llama goes because that's not very clear to me at this point in time. But we also know that the llama had an iron rod, and just by steering in the water, the llama will create this great universe, also will create order in this universe, something, right? So steering with the right, with there was a previous universe, and now it's being created order and proper universe the way we know it, and it's something very similar, this element of steering in water, very similar to other Japanese stories and Japanese cosmogonies that we do not have the time to discuss now, but it's an element pretty much in common. Let's then go to Munduruku. And here we find a god named Kurasaibo and an armadillo. And basically what happens here is that the armadillo makes an insult. He said something very negative, some sort of comment very negative, right? So God punishes him and puts him in a hole, in a sort of like rabbit hole. But here it turns out that there are men living. And so the armadillo goes back to God, tells the story of this man living in this hole, and then they together, with the help of a cotton rope, were able to save half of the men, which also implies that half of the men died, which is kind of literally against the concept of God being a benevolent creature. But with that being said, let's move on. So they recovered half of the men, and those men would become our ancestors. And then finally, we have a last story for today, and that story is that of Aboriginal tradition, where you have a god named Io. And only by chanting, basically, this god will create the world. Now, this is interesting because this is very, very similar to the Christian tradition of having a god and naming things, and through the name, things being created. Now, with that being said, though, guys, at this point, I want to know, what is the tradition, the cosmogony, the theory that you find the most interesting, and why? If you are familiar with other, or if you want to know more, please comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I am looking forward to reading all your comments. And with that being said, guys, we'll talk another time with a new video and a new topic. Please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video, comment below. We'll talk another time. Bye.